Hotel rooms are empty. People aren't able to get visas to come to the United States. Mass transit in this country is so bad. It's going to be a disaster logistically.
So, welcome back to Why Are We Like This, the podcast that treats Florida like the active crime scene it is. I'm your host, David Quinones, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tomas Kennedy. Tomas, what's up, man?
Good. The active crime scene has gone global with the World Cup.
With the beautiful game. If Tomas is here, that can only mean that we are also joined by our other co-host. And it's not a series until the home teams are 0-3. It's Gerald Doherty. Hey, Jer.
Hello, how are you?
Doing good. So we've been teasing several sports-related topics the past few weeks. So we figured with an NBA Finals that's suddenly become kind of politically divisive, and with a World Cup that seems poised to have no shortage of storylines off the pitch, affecting hosts cities like Miami, host states like Florida, host countries like the U.S., there's no better time than to have an entire Why Are We Like This episode devoted to sports. And to help us navigate these stories, we're excited to welcome back a returning guest, South Florida soccer scribe, and the mind behind the Substack Beyond the 90, our friend Kartik Krishnaiyer. Hey, Kartik, how are you doing?
Great to be with you, David. Great to be back. It is an active crime scene, the entire state of Florida, between this World Cup and all of the pro sports billionaire oligarchs shaking their tin can for handouts. It's happening all over the state. Tampa Bay Rays, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jacksonville Jaguars. It's awful.
We can have.
Now you have the added dynamic of predictive markets.
Oh God!
So the grift, the criminality is just compounding and folding into each other and just creating this monstrous, just deformed grift.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you saw it at play. I think that it turned out not to be the case, but most people were like guessing that the kid that ran, the social media influencer that ran out on the court in the middle of game 1 of the NBA Finals was trying to do so to like win
a Kalshi bet.
To win a Kalshi bet, which I think turned out to not be true, but like it's messed up that we're like in a place where that's the first thing that you assume, you know?
Yeah. If you see an early yellow card in a World Cup match.
Oh, really? That's one. That's a hot one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's what I've been hearing.
We've got Kartik here to get into the details of what's happening in the World Cup this week. But as long as we're doing sports, let's talk about the biggest current, because the World Cup still doesn't kick off for, I think, about another 48 hours or so, or 36 hours, something like that, from when we're recording. So the largest current domestic athletic spectacle is the NBA Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks. Gerald is right there with me saying, go Knicks, go Knicks. Last night, the home team stayed winless in the series, with the Knicks losing at Madison Square Garden, although the Knicks are still ahead 2-1. But the game itself was overshadowed by the presence of the Uber Florida man, President Donald Trump, who, like many Florida men, is actually a former New York boy, like me, and an outer borough dipshit, like me. So the president's presence at MSG last night created no shortage of annoying logistical challenges for people that were trying to like show up. The game had to come in 2 hours early, like some kind of international flight or something like that to go through TSA. Gerald, I want to start with you, because for years in NBA circles, we've heard about the Kardashian curse. But is this the case of the Trump curse? Because the Knicks lost.
We won't know until tomorrow, because he's not showing up for game 4. I think he got the message in game 3. Or if he got a nap, he got what he came for. This has been received extremely negatively for several reasons. One, Madison Square Garden, even during the regular season, is notoriously expensive. And now that the team is in the finals, I think like an average price for a ticket is $7,000. So logistically, the most economical way that people have to actually watch the game near Madison Square Garden is at the watch parties outside Madison Square Garden, which is to say, now that the president has shown up and you have to secure a multi-block perimeter around the space, and like you said, turn MSG into TSA, functionally the nearest block party that you can watch in a large crowd is going to be at Bryant Park. Right. Unless you were able to secure a reservation. So like everything else in our society, even just enjoying your team going to the championship has become a stratified experience because the president decided to stick his finger into the cookie jar and then fall asleep mid-game. But I will say this, I've seen a lot of complaining about his presence at MSG. Every public event that he shows up at while the Iran war continues, when he said he couldn't attend his son's wedding because of the war, the Jackson Dart rally, and now the championship games here in MSG, that to me is a positive and an embarrassment, but one that I think we can enjoy politically.
I just want to say that as a non-basketball guy, the person that I felt for last night was that random person that was flagged on Twitter as having bought the only movie ticket to see Mandalorian and Grogu at the AMC on 36th Street or whatever. Who
he would have to go through a TSA line to go see Mandalorian and Grogu.
The one guy in the movie theater is night fucking.
Wait, Tomas, but did you miss? And Kartik, I want to hear your thoughts if you have any on this NBA before we get this NBA Finals before we get to your wheelhouse, which is obviously the other type of football, not our football americano. But did you guys see Bloomberg get wiped out on the sideline on the court? Like, who was it? It was Cat, right?
I believe it was Jose Alvarado.
Yeah.
I believe he took a tumble into the former mayor.
Bloomberg looked like he was going to turn to dust when that happened.
Probably did.
What do you guys make of the fact that the Knicks had not lost a game until obviously this potential Trump curse took effect? They had a pretty impressive almost 2-month-long winning streak that started and coincided with opening night of Devil Wears Prada 2, where there was a cameo by Karl Anthony Towns, the center for the New York Knicks.
Like what Trump's presence basically breaking the string of victories.
Yeah.
I mean, there's poetry in that. Like, yeah, you get booed during the national anthem, you fall asleep mid-game, you make it so that no one outside the stadium has an affordable way to watch anywhere in the vicinity, and then they lose the game. Like, yes, there is most certainly poetry in it, and it'll be punctuated tomorrow night if the Knicks win, because he's not showing. Like I said, he's not showing up tonight. So if he shows up for the one game that let's say they win the championship.
Yeah, let's say it's 4-1.
And the one game they lost is the one that he showed up for and shut all the festivities down.
There's
so
a
that he could, you don't get much more poetry in motion than that.
Kartik, any thoughts on this ridiculous sport where people have to use their hands instead of feet?
Well, I think it just in general, Trump's so polarizing, and he is used to going to sporting events, which are MAGA sports, right? He will go to a college football game, college football, the ultimate MAGA sport. He will go to a NASCAR race where I think there are some people who may not support him, but by and large, he's supported in the crowd. So this was a major step out. This is what's going to happen if he goes to a World Cup match, which I assume he will go to. It's going to be ugly because football, or soccer as we call it in this country leans heavily left. In fact, even in Miguel Delaney's reporting this week about the FIFA-Trump relationship, Miguel Delaney, the great Anglo-Irish writer, he talked about how U.S. soccer tends to be U.S. Soccer Federation tends to be a Democratic Party aligned institution, and soccer fandom in the U.S. tends to be very left wing. So even with so many people not able,
with the exception of Alexi Lalas, I think,
with the notable exception of Alexi Lalas, who, by the way, was on the left politically at one time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh, yeah, he was, and he's gone hard right in the last decade. I know.
Why left the left?
He claims that the Democratic Party changed. He said this to me.
I didn't change.
Privately.
I didn't change the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and you know what that means when you hear that. But no, I think he got a dose of what the rest of America thinks of him last night. And you mentioned David as an outer borough guy. Manhattan has never been Trump country.
No.
Will never be Trump country.
No.
So he got a taste at MSG of what the rest of us are thinking. Those of us who live in the real world.
Yeah.
Well, you know what Trump is saying? Fuck all of you. Guess what? I'll just build an arena at the White House because that's what we're getting for the bicentennial or whatever. UFC cage fight.
Another MAGA sport. UFC is another MAGA sport. Yeah.
So fuck all of you. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Literally.
my final word on the before we get to soccer, my final word on the Trump debacle at MSG is that they cut a lot of. Very often they cut to him and Knicks owner James Dolan, who, by the way, no Knicks fan you're going to find out there defending that guy in general as a human, together in like a little shiny owner's luxury box. And I just wanted to say, like, in the immortal words of Twitter, it smells crazy in there, because Trump, when he falls asleep, the rumor is that he generally lets loose whatever his last meal was, and that and it's a big complaint from a lot of people about the smell. And he was knocked out grandpa time by 9:30. So yeah, moving on to something that's a little fresher than the stench coming from the president of the United States' ass in a place that he's not welcome. Our main topic, the biggest sporting event in the world, the aptly named World Cup. I should mention up top that if you're looking for this kind of analysis throughout the tournament, then you have got to check out Kartik's Substack. And Kartik, can you give us the exact URL that people can look for?
Yeah, it's beyondthe90.net. It will forward to our Substack site, which is beyondthe90.substack.com. But beyondthe90.net is the simple URL that'll work. And we are not going to be giving you your normal World Cup coverage. It's going to be much more critical, kind of along the lines of our discussion.
I saw it yesterday, or I think it was now, by the time you hear this, probably the day before yesterday, you started what you said was going to be basically daily posts, like a daily World Cup report, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be not what you certainly not what you see on Fox.
It ain't gamers. We're not talking about gamers here. Yeah, we're talking about contextual stuff. So
geopolitical stuff and its implications, because another thing I understand is Fox has sent a memo to all of their commentators, including Lawless, avoid the geopolitics. Yeah. No political controversies. So the World Cup is
stuff.
Good luck with that. It's funny because here on my little intro into our topic, I actually wrote the words, maybe you thought that the most popular global sport would be immune to the overall decline of all things in this country, but you would be wrong. You name it, this year's World Cup has got new dimensions of inaccessible experiences to like reinforce our affordability problem and crisis here in this country. Check. Ruthless, corrupt profiteering. Check. Health risks from climate change? Who would have thought? But yeah, it's there. Check. Labor disputes? Check. Xenophobia, America's decline on the global stage? Check and check. Kartik.
Can I add one?
Yeah. What's another?
Jeffrey Epstein. Check. Because Philip Levine, former mayor of Miami Beach, is inexplicably still, to this day, he's getting literally fucking charged for sexually assaulting one of Epstein's assistants. And he was in the Epstein call log like 14
times. Yeah, like
he had inexplicably in the Miami host committee.
Yes.
Jeffrey Epstein's entry on Philip Levine had like his weight when he was born and length in inches and centimeters. Like he had the last four of his social security number. Jeffrey Epstein knew more about the former Miami Beach mayor than I think his own parents do.
As of time of recording, June 9th, 5:46 p.m. Eastern Time, this man referred to charges implicated with Epstein, still on the Miami FIFA World Cup host committee.
Unbelievable.
I yield my time back.
So, Kartik, I'll admit that as a hoops fan, obviously, and a Knicks fan, I've been distracted sports-wise for the last couple of months. So I haven't given as many of these stories that we're talking about the full attention they deserve, but maybe you can start us off by recapitulating how we got here, which, to be fair, many folks have been warning for years, even before Trump was elected, that the U.S. was headed for like a weird World Cup where things were not really fully set up properly for it to succeed. So maybe you can get us into the topic by talking us from like the 2018 conference where they announced the North America would be the host to now, and like the high points of how we got to this point now.
Yeah, and in fact, in the interest of full disclosure, in 2018, I went on beIN Sport, whose studio is in Miami, or kind of off the Palmetto Express, Hialeah, really, and said, I think Morocco would be the better host. And I was the one American willing to do that because obviously Trump had become president, Trump first term. Now, at that point, we assume, okay, he's gone by 2026. But there were always these issues of logistics, corrupt local governments, the amount of money FIFA wanted in order to give local areas, local municipalities the ability, or county governments the ability to host. There was always all along some sort of implicit seediness with the tournament. Infantino going to the White House in 2018. People forget that. Meeting with Trump, Carlos Cordero, who's from Miami Beach, by the way, then the president of U.S. Soccer, accompanying him to the White House, him showing the red card, all of that. There was a seediness about it. And there was also my view that in order to kind of get the stench of Russia and Qatar hosting World Cups out of FIFA's system, Morocco, not the most upstanding country, but a country that would not have any of these sorts of political controversies on a macro scale, that was a way to cleanse it. They happened to be the country bidding against the U.S. They would not be my preferred host, but they were the only other country bidding. So I thought that would be better. Now Morocco is getting a piece of the next World Cup as a consolation prize, but the U.S. wins the bid, and along with Canada and Mexico, but clearly it's an American-led bid. Now all FIFA is interested in is money, and all the oligarch capitalist class in the United States, which has recently found football as a sport they can exploit in the last 10 years, right? It was very much a niche kind of left-wing sport, as we talked about a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
They have piled in. So I knew in 2018 this is going to make matters much worse. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry who are batting the taxpayers, wanting money for all these things, they're going to say, because we're going to have the biggest sporting event in the world, and Atlanta can host, and Miami can host, and Dallas can host, they're going to use this as an exploitative event, the likes we've never seen. And that is exactly what's happened, unfortunately. I have to give Rahm Emanuel credit, not my favorite person, but I saw that interview he gave with the New York Times that he said that FIFA came to Chicago. And, you're wondering why Chicago, which is one of the three largest cities in the U.S., is not hosting. Emanuel said they made all these demands on us, and I couldn't go for it. Right? I couldn't do that to my residents in Chicago. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case here in South Florida. That wasn't the case with Dallas. That wasn't the case with New Jersey, where Governor Phil Murphy threw in big time with FIFA. So basically, to summarize the situation, you have governmental entities, whether it's the state of New Jersey, whether it's Miami-Dade County, whether it's some of the municipalities out in Texas, throwing money, hard-earned money of taxpayers at FIFA, this global not NGO, which has more power than the United Nations, that in fact probably has more power than most sovereign nations, just throwing billions at them in order for the privilege to host this tournament, which, because Trump has come back into office, is not going to have the sort of, these sporting things never get the sort of economic return, we know that,
right,
that they promise. But this one especially, hotel rooms are empty. People aren't able to get visas to come to the United States. Mass transit in this country is so bad. People are showing up and they can't get to the games, or they won't be able to get to the games. They're not able to go to other cities because, again, there are no trains in this country to take you from Miami to Atlanta or Atlanta to Dallas, etc. Maybe New York to Boston. That's it. And it's going to be a disaster logistically.
So, Kartik, I was reading today an article by Adam Crafton of The Athletic on just the level of access and influence that Infantino has had, and just how sleazy and ingratiated he is with the administration. I know I tweeted something about this, but I guess I'm trying to get your take on what was Infantino's long-term plan, as the United States was requiring travelers from 50 countries to pay a $15,000 bond for visa applications, as they were pausing visa applications for nationals from 70 plus countries, as they were instituting travel bans for I don't know how many global South countries, as U.S. citizens were getting shot and killed, by ICE agents, and that was spreading across the world, besmirching the reputation of the country even further. What was sort of his long-term vision of how migration processes, visa processes were going to work both for players, the delegations, fans, logistical staff, just the whole infrastructure that's required to put an event of this magnitude. Was there any sort of long-term vision, or it was just kind of like, fuck it, let's just power through it?
My understanding was thought he could, because FIFA, there's this megalomania he has, and there's this NGO power that FIFA has, that we could push through this. So, for example, the Somali referee detained at Miami International, he had a diplomatic passport. That is the way it has historically worked. When you do these football events, whether it's the World Cup or the UEFA. I have some experience actually having worked for as a consultant for the ICC when they had the World Cup, the Cricket World Cup in the United States, how to deal with these processes. Now, of course, Biden was the president then, so very different immigration picture. Yeah, very different atmosphere. But Infantino, apparently, from what I'm told, I should say, I have many of the people who work in the building in Coral Gables are my former coworkers. So a few of them are people that I've actually supervised directly previously in my jobs in this sport. So I have a lot of friends in that building, and they're not defending Infantino to me privately, but they're saying he thought this was the way to neutralize Trump. He knew Trump was a problem. He knew this was a problem for FIFA's image, which, by the way, you mentioned the Global South, Tomas. You get elected. Gianni Infantino is president of FIFA because of the African Confederation, the Asian Confederation, and the Caribbean nations uniting behind him. All Global South nations. So he thought he could somehow neutralize Trump's racism, or whatever we want to call it. Let's call it what it is. This race-based immigration system that he's trying to put in place by ingratiating himself to him. Yeah. Now FIFA is having a huge climb down. FIFA has never had this problem before. When they've had tournaments in Germany, South Africa, Brazil, Qatar, wherever, they have always been able to control kind of the immigration situation, irrespective of those countries' own immigration laws, for the 28 days or 35 days of a tournament. And this morning, the UK media, who I watch a lot of UK-based news programs, and I'm actually, at the moment, this will be over on Thursday as England flies out, and my World Cup effectively ends because I'm not accredited by FIFA anymore. I am accredited by the English FA, so when they're in South Florida, I can cover them, or in the state of Florida, so they have a friendly tomorrow in Orlando. But the English media, the UK media in particular, after the Somali referee was detained at MIA, has gone into overdrive about this World Cup. They've been skeptical the whole time. And, England is one of the favorites, so they've been kind of dancing around it. But once that happened, I think that was a lightning rod. Now, why was it this particular incident when so many other people's visas have been denied? Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know how to explain why.
Maybe the proximity and the closeness, the fact that we're like a few days away.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
But you're right, because we've been seeing stories like these trickle out, right, Kartik? There've been, not just the big one with Iran, but like a bunch of stuff has been like a bunch of like things like this adjacent to it. To this,
I think it's a bunch of things. I think it's the proximity to kickoff date. I think it's the fact that this guy did have a valid document, a diplomatic passport for entry. I think it was the fact that he's an award-winning referee. I think he was named one of the best referees.
One of the best in the world.
In Africa and in the world. I think he was selected, as like the 53 referees for the final. And I think also it's the fact that ties into like this sort of really visceral racial commentary by Trump on Somalis specifically. So it sort of converged just a lot of things into just, okay, this is symbolic of a larger trend and dysfunction around the World Cup. In my opinion, that's how I see it.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit from that, the xenophobia piece and the Trump immigration posture and all of that, to kind of a different dimension of what's different. At least it feels that way, and if people are complaining about it, about this World Cup. And again, as the sort of ugly American that really only paid attention until like the last week, that never would pay attention to the World Cup until like the last week and a half or so, the last few matches. Yeah. It always felt like the World Cup finals were this already kind of a highfalutin, rare air. If you can get a ticket, good luck, because like most people in the world who want one won't get one. But this feels different. right? And we kind of alluded
Yes.
to this idea of the cost and that this is a uniquely now an entire tournament that is geared only for the very 1%. Walk us through that, because how is it different than previous World Cups?
So it's different in the sense. Now, I have to say this has been a slippery slope. So I think we hit a tipping point with FIFA around 2010, the kind of stadium debacle in South Africa, building stadiums that had no benefit for that country, and 2014, the outright corruption of the Brazilian World Cup, the outright corruption of Brazil, and the administration at the time, and then. Obviously, the sort of proto-fascist Bolsonaro movement was already in full swing.
Blooming.
Yeah, even though Lula was still in power first stint at the time when they were awarded the World Cup. But this one is different because, one, the travel costs are enormous within the country, right? This is another reason why I don't think the United States is equipped to host these sorts of tournaments. If we had some, I'm going to be nasty about this. If we had some fucking trains and some real mass transit in these American cities, it would be different. But we don't. Okay. The only
Kartik,
place...
hang on one second. Gerald, did you track that the discourse about a month and a half ago when Europeans were posting screenshots of MetLife Stadium and they were like, "Oh, this is a very short walk from Manhattan. We can just walk there." And it was no, don't try to do that. People had to explain, you cannot walk to MetLife Stadium from Manhattan.
There's no subway station there, right? There's no mass
no
transit
pedestrian footbridge. No, it's the turnpike, baby. That's it.
Right, exactly. So once that became known in Western Europe and the UK, that made it very, very different in their minds. And then the cost, then the Trump aspect, and then this feeling. And it is, I feel it sometimes as a degree of condescension. But in Western Europe, there's this view that the United States will never get this sport. And there's also the view in Western Europe in particular, and we'll talk about the global South in a minute, but in Western Europe specifically, that this is an elitist sport in the US. So it's a working class sport in Britain. It's a working class sport in Spain. It's a working class sport in Germany. And you have people in the favelas in Sao Paulo playing, and in the barrios in Buenos Aires. That's the essence of football. In the US, it's been seen as this pay-to-play, rich kind of suburban sport. Hi, Daisy. My cat Daisy keeps saying hello. You've heard her earlier in the podcast.
She's always
hi,
welcome
Daisy.
on. All pets welcome
hi,
on. Why
Daisy.
are we like this?
But this is the reality of the situation where people see America already as an elitist, capitalist, money-hungry society, a society where oligarchs rule the roost. And now that this is the most expensive, inaccessible World Cup on record, that just reinforces all those, it's confirmation bias for so many people about the United States and what the United States represents. And people don't like to hear this in this country, but there is a reason there is a reason. I don't want to get too political here and offend some of your audience, but there is a reason why there are people. Them. Yeah, there are people in soccer in this country who are left wing. I mentioned it's a left wing sport, who still bring Che Guevara banners into matches, who still say, if you ask them about Fidel, I love Fidel. Okay, because there is a view even among people who are involved in this sport in this country that our country in this sport has gotten away from that and is now this sort of pay-to-play, very oligarch-driven, inaccessible product. And this World Cup is reinforcing that. So it reinforces that for the domestic audience, and it reinforces that for global perceptions of the United States, and quite frankly, confirmation bias for a lot of people about this country.
In other words, when soccer comes here through FIFA, it basically stops being about soccer altogether and starts being about, the money turnstile.
Yeah.
Well, Kartik, speaking of the sort of Americanization of the World Cup, this is not such an important thing, but I wanted to get your opinion on this. Is there going to be a halftime show during the final? Is that actually happening?
Okay, so this is another thing that reinforces, particularly in Britain, particularly in Britain, because I was at the El Clasico they brought to Miami, Stephen Ross brought here in 2017.
I remember
And
that.
so you had American journalists and a lot of local South Florida journalists who were accustomed to that sort of pageantry. And then you had basically Spanish journalists and British journalists, some Catalan journalists from Barcelona, Castilian from Madrid, and then the usual UK journalists who cover these things. And the Spanish and British contingents were like, what the fuck is this when we hit halftime? Like, what is this? And this is why. And so the Spanish are more polite about things, but the Brits are always like, oh, you damn Yanks. And this is why we can't let Yanks near this sport. This is going to, again, confirmation bias about Americanization is if there is this halftime show. And I guess the BBC has already announced they're not going to broadcast it.
Oh,
so that's in Britain, where I know there'll be a backlash. But I think in Spain, Germany, France, Italy, there'll be a backlash also. I think in Western Europe in particular, they don't want that.
That's amazing that they're not going to broadcast it.
So do we know who's performing? I have no idea about this. Like, we don't know. Okay,
We're getting Good Bunny this time.
we're getting the Good Bunny. Last time we tried the.
I think it is Bad Bunny, honestly.
Well, he was just in Spain last night. I know that he was
So Trump's
performing.
not coming, I guess. Then.
So Trump won't come to it.
That's good. That's good. I hope it's him there.
I can't imagine the logistics again. Like we talked about Madison Square Garden, which is a pretty controllable situation. It's like at the very most 23,000 people, with like maybe another 30 or 40,000 people milling around outside in the area that was shut off, for the viewing parties for a World Cup match. It's absolute mayhem. I can't imagine hundreds of thousands of people like in shoulder to shoulder, just engulfing the area. I can't imagine putting the most assassinatable person in the world like in the middle of that. Like,
Kartik, I want to go back to something that you touched on earlier, which was how Infantino became FIFA president, right? And you're right. He was basically leveraged a lot of the non-European countries, conferences. And basically, I from what I understand, his whole pitch is like, you're all going to be flush with cash.
Yeah.
But so my question to you is, moving forward, and we don't know how the World Cup is going to turn out. It's looking terrible. But what we do know is that there is and there will be severe discriminatory processes against global South countries, particularly those in Africa, in the Middle East, parts of Asia. Are those FIFA conferences, will there be held to pay regarding Infantino, or will they just be bought off by the cash? And FIFA's expected to make $13 billion from this.
Yeah.
So they're going to make a lot of money, right? So I guess my question to sum it up is, how is Infantino gonna fare from all this?
Yeah, because Infantino, as you said, has been his pitch. He's even gone into some of these West African countries and gone and spoken in French. English is the official language of all the congresses, but he's made sure they're comfortable with him. I think he buys them off, quite frankly. I think maybe this is where the U.S. gets hurt. He takes more of the proceeds away from the U.S. because what I'm hearing now, the last 48 to 72 hours, also from some of those FIFA former colleagues of mine I mentioned, is that they're not now. Maybe Infantino's anger will be any legacy project, which FIFA tries to leave over in all the host nations. Any legacy project for the U.S. is not going to happen. That money is going to go somewhere else. So that money presumably will go to Haiti, whose federation who backed Infantino and whose Haitians can't come into this country to watch their. Now, there are plenty of obviously Haitians here in South Florida, right? So Haitian diaspora can watch them, but Haitians can't come into this country. That money is going to go to the African countries. That money is probably going to go to the Middle Eastern countries who represent Infantino's base, right? Infantino has made very, very nice with the Middle Eastern countries in particular, the North African countries, starting with Morocco through Egypt, and then the countries of the Middle East. This is why Infantino has tried to at least privately protect Iran in this process. But then this show exposes the kind of weakness of FIFA, because Infantino had basically guaranteed to the Iranian Federation they would not have any problems. Now, Trump changes his mind about Iran every day anyway. So, maybe there was a hope from Infantino. He will eventually let everybody into the country. And this is also creating a competitive problem for FIFA because FIFA now has a situation where they have to base camp in Tijuana, Iran, and they get 24-hour temporary visas to come into the United States. And quite frankly, this is the sort of sleazy behavior that I have only seen from a handful of countries. Now, I mentioned cricket earlier. India behaves this way when it comes to Pakistan, where basically, if they're going to come into the country, they got to come and they got to go back to Pakistan or go to Sri Lanka. So we are in the United States now is on a very short list of countries with the likes of Russia, India. India under Modi specifically. This wasn't Indian policy before. Probably this is the way some of the tinpot dictators in the Middle East and certainly Orban behaved in Hungary before. The net result, though, Tomas, will be FIFA, I believe, will never award the United States another tournament. I do not think the World Cup will come back here, at least in our lifetimes.
Honestly, maybe for the best.
Yeah,
I gotta be honest. Like, I mean, I know that like Brazil has to deal with like the white elephants, and I think that happened also with the Olympics in China. I mean, that always happens where they, like the grift is always somewhere. And in a lot of developing countries, it's the ghost stadiums that they build to like the development and the concrete manufacturers. Everybody gets paid. That trickles through the municipality into the states, into the federal whatever. Like everybody gets paid. Everybody gets to grease their wheels a little. We don't have that here. We have our stadium infrastructure.
And let me mention one other thing about that specifically. So this is where the Iran war is a real problem for FIFA because one of FIFA's projects has been Qatar helping to fund some of these African federations. And for all the backlash against Qatar, I do want to point out that they have been generous with their football development funds. And FIFA has set up that program. Maybe that's why they're so in with Infantino also. Yeah. But Qatar now is not in the economic position to help fund football in Africa, in these developing global South nations, these black countries, right? Let's call it what it is because it's the racism of the Trump administration. Why is Qatar not in that position anymore? And Infantino and FIFA know this. It's because the United States started a preemptive war, or whatever you want to call it, against Iran on behalf of Netanyahu and Likud in Israel. And that has put Qatar who became a target because they host a U.S. base, that has made them a target and thrown their economy into chaos. So that has trickled down to affect the football economy of all these countries to where FIFA is now going to have, to your point about Infantino needing those votes, Tomas.
Right. No.
Go ahead.
No, and Kartik, there's the dialogue and the jokes about Infantino giving Trump the peace prize. They're tired. Everybody gets it. It was ridiculous. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out what a fool Infantino looks like. That on the week that the World Cup is about to start, not only was there a flare-up of hostilities again between Israel and Iran, but like now they're about to flare up again. I mean, Trump is tweeting that the Iranians took down an Apache helicopter of the Strait of Hormuz, is giving the Israelis the green light for a major retaliatory event 36 hours before the game is about to start. I get the World Cup is not the biggest story in relation to that, but man, Infantino looks like a fucking idiot, honestly.
Yeah, but it is kind of the biggest because it is the biggest sporting event in the world, and it's something that typically the world pauses for. So he's looking like a fool. And let's also state this: this is a guy who previously said, "I'm black, I'm gay, I'm blah blah blah," because he's wanted to be this inclusive guy who gets support from those communities around the world. As we've talked about now repeatedly, his base has been African and Asian countries. It has not been European or North American countries. So
the famous story of the World War I truce, which happened during Christmas, is that they stopped and they played soccer.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean? They play football. And we can't even do that for the World Cup now.
Yeah, and it's 100%. Particularly problematic because I think the countries that Infantino is closest to, besides the countries I've said that have supported him, but the countries that have financed him, the countries that have backed him, are the countries who took in U.S. bases in the Middle East, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, who are getting bombed by Iran as retaliation. So I think not only does FIFA move away, this is now a geopolitical point, not only does FIFA move away from the United States after this, I think those Gulf states are moving away from the U.S. They're not going to U.S. bases anymore after this. Yeah. And those are the places where global football is being financed. They're not being financed by the United States. They're being financed by the Gulf states. So there is private equity money from the U.S. involved, but this is where it's gotten. This is the view of the U.S. in general. Yeah. You guys might disagree with this take, but now within the football world, private equity money coming from the U.S. is seen as seedier and dirtier by many in Europe than money coming directly from the PIF in Saudi Arabia, from MBS, or money coming from the UAE, because there's just this view now that the U.S. has become. I'll
tell you, the sovereign wealth funds, the one thing that they don't do is that they do not rip the copper wiring out of the walls the way that the U.S. private equity does.
We don't disagree with that take, Kartik.
No.
Okay. Because I have to agree with the take. I agree with you guys, and I agree with the view in Europe. But this is the point I'm trying to make. All this World Cup has become confirmation bias about what people thought the United States was throughout so much of the world.
Kartik, I know you have to hop off soon because you have somewhere to be. But before you go, I do want to ask you what your prediction is for how the World Cup is going to unfold, at least here in Miami. How do you think these matches, the infrastructure, local officials, the authorities are going to handle this massive sporting event and responsibility?
And also drop a winner. Drop your winner prediction.
Yeah, I'll drop a prediction. Well, first thing that's happened today is Daniela Levine Cava says she's all in on Dave Jolly as soon as Dave Jolly hires Christian Elbert. So that's part one. So Levine Cava is going to try and justify Miami-Dade's expenditure by talking about all of these tourists coming in. We're going to see pictures carefully propagated and sent to the news media in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale media market of people, of droves of fans getting off of Tri-Rail or getting off of the Bright Line at the Aventura station.
Getting lost at Aventura, yeah. Spending money,
right.
Spending money at the mall, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see all these photos of people at the Fan Fest. I know Broward County today sent out an email blast about all the street events going on in Broward County as part of the Miami host city thing. So they're going to try and spread this propaganda. But I think the general impression is stay away, and there is going to be a huge backlash, particularly if traffic gets worse, if there's all sorts of disruptions to normal business days here in South Florida, which I think there will be. Yeah. And then I think moving beyond that, we're looking at a situation where so you have in terms of Uruguay's playing 2 matches in Miami. Colombia's playing a match or 2 here. I don't think Argentina is, but there are a few countries that have diaspora here. So they're not as directly impacted because they will have supporters. But I think you're going to see when Portugal comes here, when you have some of these other countries, Egypt, I think might be playing a match in Miami.
Colombia, right? Portugal, one of the most hyped.
Yeah, one of the most hyped matches. That you're not going to have the tourists or the kind of general flow of fans that you would have for those sorts of matches in that we've had in past World Cups. And then I think, in particular, in terms of South Florida, you are also going to get a pretty strong backlash in terms of how difficult it was to get to Hard Rock Stadium. So you are going to hear from people after this, oh my goodness, it took an hour for me to travel from Aventura to Hard Rock. It took 2 hours for me to get from Miami Beach or from Fort Lauderdale to Hard Rock. And I had to be in the stadium 3 hours before kickoff, and I couldn't leave for 3 hours after. And then my shuttle bus went to the Tri-Rail station, and the Tri-Rail was done for the night. Or there was one extra train coming, and it was coming in a half an hour. So these horror stories, because of the logistics, the fact that the $60 million has not been spent well, the $60 million Tomas, you in particular have been harping about very justifiably. I think it's going to all blow up in the face of Levine Cava and Miami-Dade County.
God willing. Yeah, you're gonna see a bunch of Germans dodging traffic like Frogger on the US 1 as they step out of the Brightline station. If they ride the Brightline.
Especially for Germans, right? Germans are used to being able to take a train, walk right into a ground, right? This culture is totally different in Germany. So, in fact, my model World Cup was when it was in Germany in 2006. No one needed a car.
Yeah.
Seriously, I was there. All you did was you trained around.
I remember I heard a lot about it that from Miami Herald sports writer and a friend of mine, Michelle Kaufman, who covered that among many other World Cups, and she said that it was a dream being able to cover there. Yeah.
So who wins, David? You asked me that. I think France is the obvious favorite, which would be which I think would be also something that debunks would be great in Trump's America, because France is this multicultural, eclectic. Mostly dark-skinned team, right? Mostly players from whose origins are from France's former colonial empire, right?
Holdings,
And I think the other great story would be if somehow England won the World Cup and disrupted 250 with a team which again is largely people from.
I got something to root for now, and I'm gonna literally be in London on 4th of July, so that'll be a lot of fun.
So England's team is largely black too, or of kind of colonial diaspora. And the thing I'm hearing from England fans in particular is that they can't believe like the propaganda around America 250. They're all very offended by Trump. So I don't know that affects the football team, but the fandom, they want to win it for that reason. So I think I'd go France though as the favorite. I think Portugal, Spain. Not sure about Argentina this time. And I thought Uruguay maybe with Bielsa, but it doesn't seem like his system's working well with them. So I'm gonna say France, Spain, Portugal, probably one of those three. Outside chance for England would be the fourth.
For Haiti.
There's your
Oh, I am too.
There's your Kalshi bets right there, boys and girls and everybody listening at home. Gerald, that reminds me a lot of like the English getting angry about that reminds me a lot of like, a team scoring on the other team in the last minute of a blowout and they get pissed off, and it's like, well, you should have stopped us. You should have played defense. If you wanted to do something about it, you should have done something 250 years ago. Should have won then. Why didn't you win then? Okay, so anyway, the life of a sports writer, it has no off hours, and as Tomas alluded to, Kartik is headed off to begin his coverage.
And by the way, where I'm going is to see Curacao, who have qualified for this World Cup for the first time, to see their team. They're having a reception for them in Boca. But just real quickly, to Tomas's point, Haiti qualifying is one of the great stories, because not only they would have qualified in a 32-team World Cup the way they went through qualifying, beating Costa Rica, beating Honduras, beating out these Central American countries that historically have qualified. And they didn't get to play a single match at home. They played their entire campaign in Curacao. Every single Haitian player has to play outside of Haiti because of the political turmoil in Haiti.
Yep.
And some of those guys I know personally and have worked with in the past. So, the three national teams that actually have players that I have personal relationships with are Haiti, Canada, and Curacao. So those are actually the three countries I'm rooting for. But then I've got this thing in the back of my mind. It would be great if England won. That would just screw up the whole USA.
It would be
250 propaganda myth.
It would be very hilarious.
Yeah, it would be very embarrassing for this Trump administration. So that would be great.
So Kartik, thank you for joining us, and thanks for all the context and having the conversation. Don't forget that Kartik is the publisher of Beyond the 90 on Substack. So go follow him there, and we're going to post his socials in the show notes. So be sure to follow him there. Thanks so much, Kartik. And let's not wait until the next World Cup to have you back on. Let's have you back on soon.
Let's do this again soon. There's so much to talk about in this corrupt, God-forsaken state at this point.
A post-World Cup debrief.
That's right.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's do it.